So let's begin. Welcome everybody to Edge Grip Podcast, and we were thinking about doing some sort of an intro, but I don't know. We'll think about it. This is episode number. What number is it now?
Five.
Five. And we have the biggest guest we ever had here. We have Ben Spies. Usually I read the bio before I say the name, but I couldn't wait. So your bio is this: you started riding at the age of 5, started racing at the age of 8. In 1994, at the age of 10, you won the YSR championship.
Yep.
2000, the age of 16, won the AMA Road Race Horizon Award winner.
Yep.
2003 AMA Formula Extreme on Suzuki GSX-R 1000. 2007 AMA Superstock on GSX-R 1000, which is the best bike in the world. Don't tell Nabil. AMA Superbike champion 2006, 7, 8 on a Yoshimura Suzuki, and of course you beat that other guy. I'm not gonna say who. 2009, you jumped to World Superbike and you immediately won World Superbike Rookie of the Year on an R1, which I saw in the Long Beach show. They wouldn't let me sit on it, but I took a bunch of pictures and I was like, yeah. Raced MotoGP 2010 to 12 on a Yamaha, 2013 on a Ducati, scoring 1 pole position, 1 win, and 6 podium. So you won a MotoGP race, right? Am I correct?
No championship, just 1 race. That was it.
Well, you stopped before you could win the championship. We were just talking about you today, and we were like, if he hasn't, had the bad luck that he had in 2013, he would be a MotoGP champion. So you had that ability. You just needed to click with the bike, and you needed to get off that Ducati.
I mean, we might give them a run. It's tough. Those guys are fast, but it was tough when I was in GP. I will say there were only a few days that I felt at home on the bike, and it was. I think people are starting to understand a little bit more the difference. Like when we see Gerloff jump on it compared to a superbike, it's not so much talent, it's how you ride the bike, front tire to rear tire and squaring up corners versus, mega roll speed. And it's just a huge difference. And again, I only had 3 seasons there. So, kind of learning and stuff like that. And then right when the 1,000 came back, I thought that was kind of our time. Had some bad luck in 2012 and then the injury and all that stuff. So, it's hard to say. I see what Dovi did after, when the Ducati got better, and you kind of, you think you could battle for it or compete, but in the same time, you're not there. So it's just the way it is. But we had a lot of good luck, in the career. So the last kind of year, it did suck that it ended like that for sure. But in the same time, I can't be, upset too much with the prior, success.
Yeah. And then the last accolade is the 2022 AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame. Did they give you an award, or what's?
That just happened, I guess. Yeah, a few weeks ago. So I got to fly out to Ohio and get accepted with James Stewart and Kenny Coolbeth and a few people. So no, that's a cool thing. Very excited and it means a lot.
All right.
Well deserved.
Yeah, well deserved. What type? Okay, I'm going to jump to the questions. Right, I'm so excited. I can't. Usually it's a regular podcast, but I'm getting starstruck and nervous. So I'm just going to do my thing. And what type of influence did Keith Cherry have on your career? And you guys still hang out?
Yeah, that's actually my business partner now. So yeah, we a lot. He was my mom's boyfriend at the time. When I got into racing, and got me first bikes and first street bikes, and just started in parking lots, and was huge in my career. My parents were obviously both supported the racing, but yeah, if it wouldn't have been for him, probably wouldn't have raced motorcycles. So was really big, and he was good enough when I was younger to teach me, the right things and in a good way. And then, about when I was 12 or so, 12 or 13, I kind of graduated past what he knew, and that's when we got a mechanic to come in and started getting some different coaching and stuff like that. But no, huge. I mean, when it came to discipline and riding with a meaning and the right training and all that kind of stuff, I mean, he was a huge thing for my career for sure.
Do you have any since you're in Texas? Do you have any good hunting stories? I know you like to hunt.
Yeah, no, I'm a big hunter. I hunted a lot before racing, and then when I was about 14 till I stopped, I just didn't hunt as much because I was always training in the winter or trying to sleep because I was training and didn't want to duck hunt. But my main hunting that I like is duck hunting and elk hunting with a bow. I don't really shoot guns at anything except for ducks. I'm a bow and arrow guy, deer, all that kind of stuff. So I enjoy it. I like getting on my feet, in Colorado and actually hiking, and going after it. The last elk I shot was 2 years ago. Shot it right at 12,000 feet. So we had to backpack it, all the way back to camp and do it the right way. So yeah, no, I'm not hunting every single day, but when I do it, I like it to be like that and a challenge.
Who do you go out with?
I have a pretty good group. I've got like 7 or 8 buddies that kind of the different types of hunting. They're kind of, a couple of them are more into it, so we kind of do a couple trips like that. But like I said, now I've got a couple girls, so getting up in the morning and not coming home till 10 in the morning, that's kind of, those days are a little bit few and far between.
How old are the kids?
One is about to be 4, and then one's 6 right now. So they're wide open. Like I said, they got Italian blood in them, so it's full.
That's a handful at that age. Yeah, we're past that, thankfully.
Well,
Do they speak Italian?
Yeah, they don't speak Italian great, but they understand 100%. And so when my wife's talking with them, even in the house, she's speaking only Italian. So when they went back to Italy this time, they actually were speaking some, and it made it nice for the grandparents and stuff like that.
Where'd you meet her?
When I was in Italy,
Nice.
back in 2010. So yeah, we've been together since then. 12 years for me, long time.
Yeah.
She watched you race?
No. She knew motorcycles, but lived around San Marino. So we, like I said, 2010 we met. It's kind of long distance for kind of a year and a half, and then moved her here in 2012, and been together, since then, obviously.
That's awesome. So what does she think about the US of A?
She likes it a lot. It's funny, on the political meter, because it's kind of, now that she lives here, she sees a lot of things that I think, some of Europe doesn't see. And she likes it. We both like, Europe and Italy. If I could bring 30 or 40% back, I would, and kind of slow America down. But when it comes to raising kids and being able to get what you want whenever you want at any time of the day, basically, I mean, that's America. So it's we're a little bit spoiled, but when it comes to raising kids and living a life, it's really nice. She likes it. Like I said, there's some things like the food and the culture and kind of the easygoing of the Italian people compared to how the Americans are, that if we could bring back, we would. But she loves America.
Yeah, a lot more go. Yeah, I have a foreign girlfriend too, and don't get me started on the politics. She's
Yeah.
Russian and all.
No, I get it. No, it's funny. It's you can go to 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could have warned you, Nabil. I'm half Russian,
Nice.
and my girlfriend's from Texas.
Oh, wow.
Farmer's Branch.
There you go.
So
Oh,
I got
great.
a motorcycle question for you. So you went faster around Willow Springs than any man alive or dead in the 117s unofficially. How did that happen, and can you break down a lap for us?
Willow. I mean, that was when I got remember what year that was.
Between 6 and 7, I think.
Okay.
Because I was at the Long Beach show and I was talking to one of your mechanics and he kind of blurted that you guys went to a test in Willow Springs and unofficially you did a 117, but he didn't really want to talk about it, but he talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, Willow's a track that honestly I don't have a lot of time on. I did a 24-hour back in 2000 when I was 15. I did it with Army of Darkness in a Weir race. So that was kind of the most laps I did there. And then we did, that one test out there. So, I mean, honestly, I can't even hardly remember what years were what, but I just turned 2 and turned 9, turned 8. On the Superbikes, it's just, you kind of get lost out there. I mean, it's for me because I didn't have a lot of time out there. And it was one of those, like almost a rookie mistake that just trying to go so fast, picking up the throttle too fast in the middle of 2. I was about to drive off the track. I just kept accelerating. I was like, this turn's never going to end. And yeah, so it's a different track for sure. It's really bumpy. It's fast. But, like I said, about that test and all that, I can't remember a whole bunch about it. But it was, I remember we did go quick there. I can't remember exactly how fast we went though.
Did you double apex too, or did you just hug it?
What's that?
Did you double apex on 2 or did you just hug it?
I mean, my riding style is always, if I can kind of run it in and triangulate the corner to get it out, I just always do, and try to scrub speed on the side of the tire on the entry more or less. So 2 is one of those where you can accelerate so hard into it, and basically just let off and let the corner and the side of the tire slow you down, turn it, and fire it back out more or less. I mean, it's a long corner, so you can't really triangulate it, but it's so big and wide, you can run it in the entry and just kind of scrub the speed as you slow down instead of just braking before and entering.
Yeah, my main problem there is ground clearance with my boot. I don't know why my boot is just on the ground all the way, and it just limits me.
It's got to get your main problem toes as far as you can back on the peg.
Yeah. I have gigantic feet. Now you went 123s around Fontana, which is another track we ride at.
That was a fact. We talk about big feet. I'm a size 11, but when I raced, I wore 9.5 boots.
Just because it's less wide.
Yeah, well, just because I would drag my toes, and that's why when I raced, if you ever saw my feet without socks on them, I had my toenails were dead because I ran my boots so small. Just because if I ran 11s, I was always kicking my toes as far as I could in the front to bring the boots back because I would drag them on the ground. So Alpine Star, we ended up having a custom, size where it was more or less 9.5 just for race boot, and it was uncomfortable. It hurt, but it was just that was the only way I could ride.
I hear you. Size 13 here, so.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I can't figure out the gear shift. I mean, just trying to figure out above and below, and it's
albatross feet.
Yeah. so
you're self-interested because we go to that track a lot. What's the secret to Fontana?
Yeah, so that's a track that it's not like I love it, but I was for some reason I was pretty quick there, and just the turn 1 chicane. There's so much speed. There's so much time through the first one all the way till the bus stop left-hander through the apron. It's over 100 mile an hour. So the way I looked at it with all tracks is the faster you can be through the faster section, that's the time. So turn 1, I would pick up the throttle before the curb, like the curb that's on the banking. I'd pick up the throttle before that so I could help change directions with the bike. And sometimes I wasn't always the fastest just breaking into it, but I would pick up the throttle a lot sooner, make the bike transition through the left, right, left a lot faster. And then also I think I just was a little bit more comfortable sometimes staying close to the curbs or staying close to the edge of the track. There's a couple pictures and a couple turns in general where, if there's no curbing, I would run the tires about 2 inches, from the grass, and I was hanging all the way out, over the grass. So in that corner, which would have been turn 3, by setting it up like that, hanging way over and getting the bike turned, when I make the next right, I'm able to be straight lining back for the left that, was the big acceleration point of that track. So just my line through the left, right, left would make the bike be 10 degrees more stood up through the fast left that you're accelerating coming back into the speedway. So it was basically doing that through the chicane and then doing that through that next section. That first, all through there, I think that was the biggest advantage of the track.
And what gear were you on when you did that? Turn 2 and 3.
I think in turn 3 on the Superbike, it probably was first gear, just because they have super long first gears in them. But going through the chicane, I believe it was down 2 gears, down to 4th gear through the chicane.
Okay.
And then you'd be spinning in 4th all the way around the apron, and then back down to 1st or 2nd. If you're on a super stock bike, it's 2nd. If you're on a Superbike, it's 1st.
Okay.
Taking some notes, that goes for about 10 seconds for me right there.
And you go back to first gear on a super stock bike and it's going to start chattering all the way in there. So that's that was the negatives I didn't like about racing production bikes, is always kind of having to not use first gear. 600s you could sometimes, but thousands, it's really tough to go down to first gear and not get the bike chattering and all that stuff. So
yeah, I would go to first gear, turn 9. It's the left one, and it would just wheelie uncontrollably out of it. So I stopped doing that. And I just went to 2nd, which is I'm losing speed, but I'm not scaring myself too much.
Nice.
So speaking of tracks, then what's your US favorite and your world favorite, or top 2, 3? If
man, that's I mean, that people ask me that all the time, and it's
it's the animal shapes, right? Which animals?
A T-Rex. That would be good to take it. In America, Laguna. Everybody says Laguna because it's cool. I mean, it's got the corkscrew and all that, but I don't know. I mean, I'd probably have to lean a little bit more towards like Road Atlanta or Road America. Through the woods and good elevation. Road Atlanta has just wicked elevation, if y'all have ever ridden that. And then in the world, Phillip Island's a real special track. Everybody says it for the obvious reasons, but then even going to a track like Monza, for me, I always looked at it like it's just straightaways and it's just really hard braking, chicane, and the parabolica. That's basically all it is. But the way that the track is through the woods, because it's a big park, like it's a huge park that the track's actually in. So people are always walking around and doing stuff. And it's got a lot of overhanging trees on the back straightaway. So that was always a really cool track as well. So yeah, I would have to say, there, Aston was cool, Phillip Island. When it comes to the world, those are probably my top 3. And then in America, Road Atlanta, Road America, Laguna. It's too hard to do one track. It's tough.
So you prefer fast and flowing racetracks over technical racetracks?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, America's a lot of technical tight stuff, hard brake and stop, fired out. I love, the tracks like that. But, when thinking about it, you go to Mugello, tracks like that. It's, you have to be able to ride that style just because, the way that we raced in America just doesn't work. The bike settings are different and just the way that you ride is a lot different. But again, like even Mugello, again, you ride that track, it is unbelievable. So it's always tough to name a track. There's too many good ones.
So is it easier to transition from here to Europe or from Europe to here? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be on the same bike. Again, if you're gonna, for somebody like I think Garrett, going over racing superbikes, I think that move is probably a little bit easier just because the European guys, when they come over here, the bumpiness of the tracks and some of the safety of the tracks, it kind of spins them out sometimes. So sometimes they just don't push as hard as they're used to pushing because of the what if factor. And that's what just through the last 20 years, you've kind of seen that with Europeans in general. Not a bad thing, because I can understand it once I'm coming back now to America. But yeah, I would say, like, if you're going over, you need to be on the same bike. And I think it's a little bit easier for a top level American, going like a Gagne, jumping on a Yamaha over a World Superbike and being at that pace, rather than Locatelli coming here and beating Gagne at Sears Point. I don't see that. I see that a little bit harder, just because it's such a big difference with the tracks.
Yeah, you see it with Petrucci this year, right? So his main concern is, I don't know where the bumps are, so I'm just following Gagne.
Yeah, and he's also fighting some other stuff too. I mean, they're not taking anything away from Gagne, because he's also had his number. I mean, he's been a little bit faster than him everywhere, but he's made a couple mistakes that Danny Lowe's capitalized on, etc. But a lot of people don't talk about the difference with the bikes and the Ducatis on Dunlops, because from my knowledge, there's not many fast Ducatis ever that have been on Dunlops, just because they haven't been racing them in the series for the last 10 years. And that bike was developed for Pirellis in World Superbike and BSB. So I don't think that bike works, as good, because it's very stiff. So I think that's just something that people don't understand. I think if you put him on a Yamaha, not saying he runs off and hides from Gagne, but it would be a little bit easier for him, because he doesn't have data with the bike. And, just the Dunlops with the Ducatis, that's just an X factor that I don't think people understand, but again, he loves it here. And he's done Dakar, he's a motocross guy. So some of these tracks, I think sometimes can be better for him, because he's a bigger guy, he's more my size. So he's not, getting hurt now by the acceleration of the bikes, like we always were in GPs. And, but I think with him, it's just trying to get the bike to work a little bit better,
Yeah, he also came in and he did some things, I think, on his Instagram that he shouldn't have done, and I think he understood it. And I think once,
it's a tough situation. I mean, it is. It's I'm not making excuses for him by any means, but I know him pretty well, and he's a very good guy. I just think it was a little bit of a snowball effect when all the stuff happened, starting in Atlanta with kind of the engine thing and some stuff that happened, and then crashing in Virginia, and it just kind of, I think it was a little bit of a snowball effect. But as in now, I think everybody's seeing the true Petrucci, and he loves it over here. They like him, so I hope he stays, and think he will.
Yeah,
I hope so.
That's good. I mean, over there, it's it's a motorcycle culture, right? And then everybody's you got Rossi that can't even walk down the street, and over here, everybody in the sport is just trying to advance it, because the grandstands are.
And to give him credit a little bit, I mean, because you see some comments like, "Oh, go back to MotoGP or World Superbike if you don't like it," and it's kind of, everybody needs to have a little perspective. And it's like, he was a factory Ducati guy. He's done Dakar. He's done all this stuff. And, coming to Motoamerica, it's good for the series. Obviously, him coming, it's a little bit of a step, down for him, respectfully, but it is. And I think just trying to, grasp everything with a couple bad things that happened that were a little bit out of his control. Like I said, it's just something that kind of built up and went the way it did. But now, like I said, I think it's completely turned, and everybody kind of sees, who he is for sure.
Yeah, would love to have him here for, as long as he wants to stay here and race and live here. I mean, almost everybody that came over here, Hector Barbara and everybody else, they just love it here, and they call it home now. And the sport is better for it.
Yeah, the racing and the paddock and
Elias.
I mean, it's awesome here. I mean, a lot of people love it. It's just trying, they're building it back to where it was, and they actually are doing a good job the last, kind of 3-4 years for sure. So it's good to see, and just like I said, trying to get it back to that level, and then things can be easier, for everybody. But to do that, we kind of need the factories to get a bit more involved as well.
Yeah, it's tough. I heard Suzuki are not going to be making the Gixxer anymore because it's not Euro 5 compliant. So who knows? It might be going into race bikes only that are not street legal. Who knows? I mean.
Yeah, but that's
I mean,
also the catch-22 to that is that's going to help the youth.
Yeah, it's going to be a sport. Yeah. Once you go and you separate that, the sport from riding on the street, and it's easier to make a sport out of it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's an important point, actually, that we rarely talk about. What are your thoughts on what's happening with the motorcycle industry, like in general, in the US? I know there's this ongoing thing, like, we've raised a bunch of kids that are a little too protected, and we don't want to put them on motorcycles, and that hurt the industry, and nobody's buying bikes. And
well, that's not the motorcycle industry. That's just America in general, as in like trying to keep everybody safe and doing all that stuff because yeah, when I was 14, I was riding a 600. When I was 15, I was riding a 750 and 1000. I wasn't racing them, but when I was 15 years old, I was riding a GSXR 1000. And when I was 17 for attack, I was riding a 200 horsepower Formula Extreme motorcycle when I was 17. So, and that's what Nicky Hayden did. That's what Curtis did. That's what John Hopkins did. That's what, everybody did that kind of grew up in the earlier years. So, like I said, it's kind of hard because there's not as many places to go, in as many teams and opportunities. So you kind of get stuck in that way. Because for me, like if you're 15, 16 years old and you're on the gas and you're on a 600, then you should be off a 600 when you're 18, not when you're 22, 23. You need to be on a 1000 when you're 19, if 18, if you're a really good rider. So it's, there's things like that. But again, it's more the opportunity of teams that aren't there to do that. So it's kind of, it's difficult. But like I said, the America in general, that's kind of keeping your kids safe and doing all that stuff. The motorcycling industry in America, I just don't think they've had as many choices, to kind of do what they were doing 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So I think that's a little bit more of it, but in the same time, you have to look at, how are we going to develop the kids to be competitive with less opportunity? And the only way that's going to happen is riding race motorcycles with race geometry that are teaching you grip and teaching you corner speed. When you're riding, again, this isn't a knock on anything, but if riding a Ninja 400 compared to a Moto2 bike in development skills, the Ninja 400 does nothing hardly. If you're talking about wanting to go race in Europe, if you want to race in that class and be competitive, then that's fine. But I've said this for years now, and I know this is a fact. I mean, if you can take the 10 best American riders, and if they're riding XR80s and XR100s, and then you put them on a plane and you give them CR80s and CR125s, they can't ride them. They don't know that the level of the bike is so much higher than what they've been on, even though they've been maximizing that motorcycle. The other bar is up here, and all the kids in Asia and Europe are at that bar, so that's the only thing if we ever talk about making the kids and the youth in America being able to compete with Moto2 and all those things, that's what we're missing, in that regard. But again, it's opportunities, and now there's a talent cup in North America. So, I think it's the tracks, it's people know what they're looking at, but that's the way I see it.
I also see it as a snowball that's moving in the wrong direction. I think that a lot of young racers, they're second and third generation racers. I mean, if someone just wants to race and their parents don't understand racing, they're not racers, that's not going to happen, right? They're not going to put 10 grand on a race motorcycle for them. So
I mean, it's tough because in the same time, even if they do, there's a money aspect of it that it's not cheap, but in saying that, a mountain bike now is the same price as a motorcycle almost. So again, we have to figure that out. But I think that a lot of it just is kind of how America's changed in the last 10 years in general. That's been the biggest effect, on everything. But
yeah. All right, I got a good question for you. This question is more for me than for you, Nabil. What do you think made the Suzuki K56 so good compared to all the other motorcycles that came out at that era?
I mean, me and Matt were riding those bikes, so the bikes were good. But that was kind of, I mean, that was a large part of it, just because, and it's not, patting myself on the back, but it's me and him were, fighting each other, and all we did was try to make that bike as good as we could, and it was, I think other bikes and other manufacturers, they kind of, it's the Suzuki, it's because it's a better bike. It was because of the work we put in, and there's no doubt about that. I mean, in qualifying and practice, someone like Roger Hayden would even attest to this. Like, if it was a slow lap in practice, I was a second off our fast times. They could be another factory guy, a couple of them in practice, kind of slowing down, looking around. I would pass them, and I wouldn't be looking back to seeing if they're latching on to me and following. I wouldn't care. It was just about getting everything out, of that time, of that session, to go back and look at data and do the best we could, at the bike. So we started with that. And the Suzuki was a good motorcycle, there's no doubt. But what we did in 03 to 08 with that much development, we worked with Japan a lot. The bikes were just, we were getting everything out of them. And again, like I said, there was a lot of people that it was just like, oh, it was Suzuki traction control, and it was just the Suzuki.
And then, until they all got TCs and the results didn't change.
Yeah. And then, again, in 2009, we went over to World Superbike, and that by far was not the best bike on the grid. And it showed what, work ethic and the riding, all that stuff was doing. And I say that because I bring it back to Suzuki in the States. It wasn't anything magic. The bike wasn't magic. It was a great motorcycle, but it was because we had a plan and we were getting the most out of it come race time. And we had, two really good guys on the bike, me and him, and great mechanics and great teams. So, I mean, that much knowledge just made the bike as good as it could be.
Yeah, they still can't touch your lap times for some reason. It just, lap times.
Some have fallen, but I think I know we have Road Atlanta still, which I'm surprised about that one. Petrucci got kind of close to it, but
it's pretty insane, right? With a 20-year-old, is it 15-year-old?
Right. Yeah, it was 2000. Said it in 2008. So
and they still can't touch those.
Yeah, but sometimes you also got to factor in, the tracks deteriorate some. I don't know how good the tires are now they're running. I mean, it's a Dunlop spec tire, and they're not competing with everybody. So it just, back when I was riding them, there were some people racing them in World Superbike, I think. And even in GP, there was a couple, Dunlops out there. So, the tires could have been better back then. Who knows? But I'm not buying that one.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
I was laughing because every podcast, that question comes from Gal, because he owns a Suzuki. It's like, what is the best bike in the world, and why is it the Suzuki?
I mean, it's, I liked I liked my 09 Yamaha. I mean, it didn't change directions for anything. It was heavy. It had a really short wheelbase, so it wheelied a lot. And it did a lot of stoppies going into the corners on the brakes. But the turn in and where I knew the front tire was, that's what I had with that bike. The Suzuki was a better all-around package, but the front end of the Yamaha, I knew I could put it right there, and I knew I could make the rear end good enough to ride it out. I mean, the rear is a lot easier to ride than the front. So as soon as I felt that with the front, that was what we had with that bike. And it had decent top speed, but it just didn't have good acceleration. So if I came out in second gear, kind of mid-range onto a straightaway, we would get killed. If it was third gear, like Phillip Island, where it's dumping you on with momentum, we had one of the faster bikes up top, so it was just it had some weaknesses to it. There's no doubt. But again, like me and Tom were just talking about it a couple nights ago. And, if we went back in 09 and we had our 08 Suzuki, would have been a lot different. Would have been a lot different. But I do like the Yamaha too. I mean, I loved riding it. It was a great motorcycle.
I was going to say the road bike was not that great.
I mean, street bike. I mean, they, like I said, the guys that got on it the year after me, I think they were a little surprised when Toslin and I think it was Melandri maybe that got on it, but and they did well on it. But it's just that bike was not easy to ride. I mean, it wasn't. It was heavy. Again, it changed directions like a motorhome. It just with that cross plane crank, it was really heavy. But it had a smooth motor and it had a really good front end. So I mean, we could maximize the bike, but it was we were a little bit at disadvantage, to the Ducati and Suzuki that year.
Well, Josh Hayes was winning on it here, so.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you make the move from Suzuki to Yamaha? And please don't say it was 2008. We had the financial crisis. I needed money. And no, that's not why you did it, right? I mean, World Superbike seat.
There were a few things. I mean, I wanted to go, straight to Suzuki GP, and I had done the GPs and qualified 5th in the dry at Indy, and I think we finished 6th in the rain. Had just won, 3 titles, so I felt like we were kind of the candidate, and especially at my age, and that was just something. The way the Suzuki GP team was being run then, just didn't happen for whatever reason. So that was kind of my first pick, but it just wasn't. We weren't able to make it happen. The 2 riders, they wanted to retain them, and that was it. So as soon as that happened, I talked with Yamaha America with Tom Halverson, and I was just like, I think I need a bit of a change, and he goes, well, you're not going here. If you're going to ride for Yamaha, it's going to be a World Superbike, and they're calling you tonight. So they called me. We started talking, and this was before Laguna Seca, before the last race in 2008. And then they flew me out to Italy the next day. Me, Tom, and my mom and my manager flew out there and signed the deal. Came back to Laguna, raced it, won the championship, and then we're ready to go to 2009. But it was a lot of that. Suzuki, we were trying to make it work. It didn't happen. Me and Kevin Swantz actually were trying to get a second Suzuki team with a different title sponsor, which would have been a full factory effort, and that would have been really cool, but didn't work. And then also Mel Harris, he came to me in the middle of 2008 because he knew I was talking to Suzuki Europe, and he also knew I was starting to kind of talk to some other people, and he told me flat out, he said, if you want to make money racing motorcycles, Ben, you have to leave. It's the bottom's dropped out. And that was it. So I mean, it was both of those reasons, honestly enough, because I mean, racing, like I said, it pays for the retirement now and for the girls, so I had to maximize everything I could, and went over there and raced. And like I said, if America never would have changed, I probably would have never left. I mean, I love traveling in the motorhome, racing on the American tracks. I hate flying. Everybody knows that. I did it. I had to do it.
Did you fly business class, or did they stick you in coach?
Yeah, no, I did have to do one coach flight. We had to fly to Malaysia and coach, and that was horrible. I give all those people respect, but that was it. It was just that was the best choice, to make at the time. And like I said flying would never change it for me, or it would never change my my path with racing, but I also told people I didn't want to do it. I didn't like it, so just had to happen.
So for a guy that didn't like it, you went over there and you humiliated the entire world. So after the first couple of races, did you go back to the motorhome and you went like, you know what, it's not that difficult. I don't know what they're whining about, and we have a shot in winning this.
Yeah, I mean, it was, to be honest, though, I was going over there to win the title. I mean, I had won 3 titles in America. My feeling at that point was just, I'm able to ride a superbike as hard as it can be ridden. So I'm just going to these tracks. I got to learn them. I got to learn some stuff, but I know I can ride the bike, at its limit or close to it. So that was my feeling. I downplayed it in the media. There's no doubt. I was like, I hope, we can do it. But for the whole time, I wanted to win the first race of the year. So that's how I was. And a lot of it, that's how, from racing Matt, I had that kind of instinct, where I just wanted to win and had that kind of that killer in me, and that was it. So when we went to the first test at Portimao, we rode a 2009 bike with Superbike swing arm, Superbike suspension brakes, but it had a super stock motor in it. I mean, it definitely only had probably 10 more horsepower than a stock one. Probably 25 down on the race bike, I would think. And went out there on the day after the test, and I went out first on Haga's 08 bike, and I went faster than he did in the race week and the day before. So that was learning the track. And then I kind of was understanding the lap times at that point, and then got on the 09 bike and went a little bit quicker. And I think we ended up second quickest or quickest on the day. And that was with learning the Pirellis and the track and all that stuff. And I just, this was a true story. I took Mayo and Houseworth out to the pit wall, and we sat down. We were watching them just work on the bikes and start to unload everything and disassemble, the garage. And I said, hey, I was like, it's going to be tough. And I was like, we got a lot to learn, but I said, I know after today, learning the track and seeing the pace of the guys, I was like, we can do it. I said, it's going to be tough, but I said, that's what, I came here to do. And it needs to happen this year. And I said, if we don't win it, I'm going to be pissed off. So that's how it was. And that was, I swear, that's a conversation we had. So, when we talk about that, the one thing that still, pisses me off today, big time, is that me and Biaggi in race 1 at Phillip Island, because I wanted to win the first race. We won the second one and we would have swept it. I do feel if I wouldn't have ran off the track, we probably could have won it. So yeah, that bugs me even now, because I wanted to come in and sweep the thing and do it, but we didn't make it happen. Made the championship happen, and I got to say, the guys, they were all welcoming, even though I was the rookie coming in that kind of, set everything on fire a little bit. Everybody was awesome. I mean, the paddock, it was kind of more of an AMA paddock. Like everybody, had fun. We would have drinks, Sunday night together. Me, Johnny Ray, Haga, Fabrizio, not as much, but it was good. I mean, I had a blast.
Yeah, MotoGP is old business, but World Superbike.
It's gotten better. I mean, from when I was there till about 5 years ago, it was pretty, cutthroat. A lot of the media wanted you to start wars with people. The riders with power did stuff, behind the scenes, there's no doubt. But now, when it's became just kind of more even, it's, you can see the younger guys, they're enjoying it more. They're having a lot more fun.
I think Jack Miller is getting them all drunk.
Yeah. Sometimes they're a little bit too huggy for me, but they're having fun, which is nice to see, because I know from like 2004 to about 2015, 16, MotoGP was a different element. Everybody will tell you that, if you walk into the crowd or the paddock, it was just, a little bit stiff and everybody's kind of sizing each other up. Or World Superbike and AMA was never like that. So, I mean, those were the favorite series for those, types of reasons.
Yeah, and it's better longevity also. I mean, if you like what you do, if you're on MotoGP and there's all this pressure of, we got to win and we got to hide it from the other guy, right? Even if it's a teammate, right? It's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about this transition from World Superbike to MotoGP. I mean, that's a whole different world, right?
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I lost a little bit of weight. AMA Superbike, I raced around 165. And then when I went to 09 and Superbike, a little more straightaways, a little slower bike, I kind of got down to 160, was really lean, at that weight. And then when I went to GP, I had to lose more weight, just because I was just too big, and had to do the whole muscle atrophy over the winter and taste the metal in my mouth. And that was not fun, but got down to about 152, 153, and that was me, 5'11". But I was just a lot bigger boned, than most of those guys as well, wider shoulders. Like Rossi's my height, but he was 140 pounds. So I was giving up 15 pounds to him, even though I was physically leaner, had less fat than he did, but it was just, that's the way it was.
Yeah, it's not healthy.
Yeah, no, it's not, but it's, it's short term, and it's just, that's the way it is. It's sport. So it's not always, healthy when you're competing, I guess, if you want to say that. But for the other guys like Casey and Jorge, their weight, their size, it's easy. They can have the muscle mass and be 140 pounds and make it all work. Where even, me at 155, it's one of those things that, yes, I mean, I can go through a chicane a little bit better, than say Danny. When the bike gets upset, like if you're kind of like what happened with him and Nicky, the rear tire comes off the ground and it kind of gets out to the side, and you have to let off the brake, let it come down. That jolt, I could hold on to that stuff a lot better than say Danny could. But on the flip side was, tire management was horrible for me. Even though when I was good with it on Superbikes, I was just heavier. So I was having to roll through the corner a lot more heat in the tire, pick up the throttle sooner for a better drive, or trying to, get my drive closer to someone like Danny at Indy, coming on the straightaway. So you're using more tire, you're, using more fuel, and you don't slow down as good. If everything's good on the brakes, how many more kilos do I got to stop than the other guys? And they just don't think about that type of stuff. And then in the same time with MotoGP, there's 20 liters or 21 liters of fuel limit. When you have a fuel limit like that, it probably at least 50% of the tracks, you can't run the bike at full power. With me, just because of the weight, you'd either start the race in an auto lean mode or it would finish like that, but you would rarely ever be able to run full throttle the whole race where other riders could. So, I mean, it's just, it's one of those things that on a Superbike, not as much because the grip level's lower. But when the grip level, gets up higher, those things are affected. And it shows also when they put more downforce, like with the bikes now, the passing's just kind of starting to go away some. So that's the deal with GP bikes. It's things like that. And then a Superbike where, you can go into a corner, brake really deep, kind of almost flat track the bike and stop it, square it up out of the corner. A GP bike is kind of, I guess the best analogy is like riding a dirt bike that you're locked into a rut, or like a bobsled track where you get the thing stopped straight, with the quarter, you let off the brake and you drop your head in and just throw it in, and you use that momentum, and you create force with the tire laterally. And that's where you get the grip out of the tires with GP bikes, where with Superbikes, it's a lot more squaring it up and drive out. You don't have all that grip on the edge. So you kind of, you brake with the bike more up and down, you pivot it in the middle of the corner so you can pick it back up on the drive out. Or with the GP bike, you just let the front brake off and you're building speed through the corner for the drive. So it's just a completely different way to ride the bike, and they feel completely different, but it's also how you ride them different. So when someone like Gerloff gets on it, or even Toprak, on his first try, I talked to him after, and I know, he told me what I already knew. And it's just like, you can't ride the bikes the same. And I told him, I said, hey, be careful going in the corner doing your rolling stoppies like that. That bike will high side you going in because they're just so stiff. So just, things like that. They're great bikes, and the technology is just here. But, when it comes to riding them, they're completely different from a super stock bike or a street bike.
Yeah. I mean, those chassis, they don't need to deal with potholes on the street, right? So it's just stiff to the max, and I imagine it's also brittle. So you can't really...
They feel like they're... compared to a super bike, the general feeling is it's like a super bike to a street bike. I would just say it feels 25% stiffer, just the swing arm and everything. Triple clamps, you get on a GP bike, it's another 25% stiffer. So you just can't, you can't ride them with them twisting them, in knots coming out of the corners and doing that stuff because they're so stiff, but they have so much grip.
I imagine it's harder when you're taller as well because you have all this extra leverage. Right. If it makes sense.
I think it is harder now. Yeah. The level, it really changed in the last 4 years with how much grip the bikes are. But just because, again, like you look at the last 2-3 years, especially the passing, the racing's getting tighter, but the passing is not good at all, really. I mean, they have a couple races where it's all right, but you see a lot of just follow the leader. And when they do try to pass, sometimes it goes wrong, or they just overshoot the corner, because now with the downforce and all that grip from the tires, the in between areas where you can make the passes, the gaps are closing. And even, Jack Miller said at the press conference, the passing zones are just getting tighter and tighter. And, if you're a good enough motorcycle rider, the GP bikes, and it's what Fogarty said too, they're easier to ride. So that's why it's getting tight like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you've done some big transitions, right? You've done it all. You went from American racing, winning year, to European tracks. You haven't raced before, beating everybody that's been born on these tracks, to MotoGP and getting great results as soon as you hit the ground running. What's the mental fortitude? How do you learn so fast? How do you adapt so fast and perform at that level that quickly?
I don't know. I mean, I hate to lose one. I mean, that's just all I mean, when it comes to being competitive, if it's something that I know that I'm halfway decent at, if I'm not good at it, I don't care. But if I'm decent at doing it, I hate losing. So, I mean, that's the first thing. That's probably the most important. But two is that, I just kind of, when it came to the new tracks and the new bikes, like I kind of said, I just felt like I got to a point where riding two wheels in a motorcycle, you're riding it that hard where I'd go to a track and I'd say, okay, the most important thing right now for me is to brake as far into every corner as I can. And that's how I would figure out the corners. Like, I just get my braking point as late as I could, where I'm kind of running into the corner, almost running wide. And then I just start piecing it together. And after, 8 or so laps, it's not that bad. I mean, yeah, you're still getting smoother throughout the next session and whatever, and not looking like, you're just completely out of control. But that's what I would do. I'd just say, okay, well, I'm going to run it in as far as I can in every corner that doesn't have, an exit, like a straightaway, and just figure it out, and that's what we did. Which, again, video games, it's a big difference. Like, when if you're good on a bike and then you also play the video games at a good level, I just always told people your timing, it gets your timing when you get to the track. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit different in real life, but a lot of things are pretty similar too.
Yeah, that reminds me when I went to Phillip Island. I played it on the video game for 2 months before, so at least I learned where the turns were.
Yeah.
But that's amazing, because what they teach you kind of like is to start braking early and then push your brake markers deeper and deeper as you get to know the track. You just did the opposite.
But I don't condone that for an amateur, like, at all. Like, no, I mean, but that was the best way. And I mean, I was, one of my stronger points was the brakes too. I mean, that was what I liked to be good at. But in the same time, that's exactly what I told Tom when we went out to these tracks. I was just like, I just got to get into these corners as deep as you can, and then I'll figure out the rest of it, And then, Phillip Island, that was a good one. That was one I played for years on video games. And I do think, I remember the first session we went out, and I think, I went out for like 8 laps or so. And I think in that session, we got about 2 seconds from, where the guys were in that first 8 laps. So that's usually what we would, kind of try to do, get in that realm, in the first session.
So basically, let me translate from Ben Spies to English. In English, it's, I went out and I made the track my bitch. And that's how I won.
So that's how I went. Those years, I mean, that mentality, when you put your helmet on, that's what you have to be thinking. I mean, or something along those lines. I mean, you have to go to that level, if you're wanting to do it. But that was the easiest way for me to do it. It was just find the breaking points and just kind of put it all together.
And then you go and you psych out everybody and going like, yeah, that looks like a T-Rex. And
that video got so many. What was crazy was there was actually quite a lot of people from Malaysia, some other countries that thought it was I was being 100% real. And I was like, oh man.
That's why they're not winning. So I got a question about that. Which track reminds you of which animal, right? So which track would be the chupacabra and which track's going to be the fluffy bunny?
Oh my God.
Chupacabra.
Which one? I think I did call one. Which one did I
I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. That was
funny. Who was your favorite teammate? You can't say Colin Edwards.
Oh.
All right, say Colin Edwards.
And I had a lot of good teammates. You know, a lot of them played a pretty good role for me, I think, too. Just developing, you know, as a rider, Jason Pridmore did, you know, when I was at Attack. He was obviously the older guy then, and yeah, didn't win that year, but it just learned a lot from him. You know, Grant Lopez at Valvoline, he was a good, you know, kind of teammate. But yeah, I mean, all of them. Tommy Hayden was great at Yosh. I remember I would talk with Tom. Me and Tommy were racing in the Superbike class, and we would kind of talk about racecraft stuff and kind of help me with the races. I mean, he was just a little tick behind me and Matt. But he would, you know, if I was like, hey, what do you think? You think I should throw out, you know, 6-7 laps like this and go for it, or try to do this or whatever? And Tommy, we would talk a lot about it, you know, and he would he's like, you know what you're doing, you know, and just kind of, you know, backing me up, things like that. But a lot of good teammates. I mean, Colin was awesome. Yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite one. I mean, Colin's a great dude. Being from Texas, I mean, it was pretty fun being a teammate with him, because he was my hero, you know, growing up, and one of my couple heroes. So being able to be teammates with him in MotoGP, 2 Texans on a French team, I don't know how that ever happened, but we had fun, and it was a fun year.
How's the Ducati compared to the Yamaha in MotoGP?
You know, I that's, you know, some people ask that. I never got to ride the Ducati past my 80% because I was hurt. Just didn't. But
if you were a motor journalist, right, and it was just, you know, you would just have to tell everybody, you know, I did a comparison. Yeah, I didn't go 100%. I did 80%. And this is the things that I feel about, you know, what's different.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, it was the seamless gearbox was a big thing, and then, you know, the horsepower. It had more horsepower for sure. Usable horsepower back then wasn't as good, but it probably had another 12 or 14 more horsepower, noticeable, you know, once you got up to 5th gear, you know, for sure. But, you know, again, that bike wasn't, you know, the greatest Ducati, but I never got to ride it that hard. You know, I mean, Indy, before I got hurt, you know, I think I was about a second off the pace or something like that, and we were about 8th or so, but I was still riding hurt. You know, I wasn't riding 100%. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't as good of a package as the Yamaha for sure back in 2013, 2014, 2015 it was. But it was fast, and the gearbox was pretty cool on it. But I didn't ride it that much. You know, I probably did 200 laps on it total, you know, maybe, and that was it.
Yeah. So you've been either teammates or in the paddock with, you know, all the big MotoGP names. Tell us some stories nobody knows about, you know, the Lorenzos and Rossi's, and kind of what's the internal stuff that nobody knows about.
Wait, we have to blur him first and change the voice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I was over there with Rossi, and there was those 2 fans. I don't want to tell you what happened.
I mean, Rossi's good. Rossi's fans, they beat to a different drum sometimes, but no, he was. I mean, he you know what? I mean, Rossi made what MotoGP is today. I mean, he's definitely the GOAT for sure. I don't have any stories on him, and we never hung out much. But Jorge, I mean, I have a few stories about him, and he's funny. He just, like I said, he's a little out, you know, kind of out there, but in a good way. Just kind of, he doesn't think much. Like if there's kind of somebody talking about him or kind of something going on about him that's not good or even good, he doesn't register with him. You know, he doesn't really care too much. Or you can see by the way he dresses, he obviously doesn't care too much.
Didn't he jump to a lake one time after a race?
Almost drowned when he was in his leathers, yeah. But a very genuine guy. You know, if you just judge him off of like what you know about him in racing, I could see some people would kind of maybe not like him that much. But if you actually sat down and talked with him, he's a very, genuine person. I saw him go out one time without his gloves on in the left pit lane, had no gloves on and came right back in. What are you doing?
Was he riding a Hayabusa in Florida?
No. That was Sepang when it was about 110 degrees. But
I think a lot of the things about him were generated by the Rossi PR machine because he was battling him. So.
Well, I mean, to be fair too, when it comes to like trying to get a one up if you're in a verbal spat, like him and Rossi got into it a few times. He didn't know how to do that well. He would always kind of go the wrong way and make himself look bad, which again, it's kind of one of those things that you say one thing a little bit wrong in print, and people have it obviously out of context too. And it's just one of those things, but he's he wasn't able to fight that well, with Rossi in that regard. But he was a good dude for sure.
You think he rode so? I'm sorry, Nabil. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I always found myself defending him because most people here he would say something and they would rail at him and say, "Well, he's a whiner." I'm like, look, he's being super professional, and he may not be the best, outspoken person, and maybe he's a little shy or socially, not very gregarious, but everything he always said sounded like, hey, I want racing to be safe. I want it to be fair. I want it to be, that's how I perceived it. So I'm glad to hear kind of you sound like you believe that's the way.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, because like I said, there's been times where I've said stuff and people have taken it the wrong way, or it's been out of context, or, they don't know me and they don't understand how it is. And that's fine. I mean, that's the way media is. And that's the way some media works to get more clicks and to do what they want to do, which is fine too. But no, I mean, to call like any of the GP racers like that, whiners or something, it's like, hey, not saying any of them are better people, but because they probably can't do your job, but you have no clue what it's like to sit on that bike at 170 when it's spinning, like in the rain, and people don't have that perspective. So it's kind of, it depends what he's whining about, sometimes, but yeah, it's just, like I said, there's different things that aren't taken the right way, and it sucks because again, if that person just sat down and had a meal with that rider that they might not like, it'd be completely different. So that's always the problem with media, but that's every sport too.
Yeah. People just see that 20 million a year and they go like, oh, this guy's whining, he's overpaid. Right. But they don't understand.
As soon as they fixed that gas tank, I mean, he didn't. Everybody said, "Oh man, he shouldn't have left Ducati because then he would have went off and won the next world title," which I agree with.
Everybody makes mistakes.
I also agree that if Yamaha wouldn't have let him go, he would have won at least another title.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it too.
You do what you need to do to win it. At the end of the day, you're the guy going 200 miles an hour, and you're the only guy that can do it, right? So the fact that people sit on the sidelines and have opinions, their opinions are not based in facts.
I mean, it's good to have opinions, but it's just sometimes when people when they go to the next level of like, it's almost like they want to answer from him, like, why'd you do that? Or it's kind of like, hold up, like just pump the brakes just a little bit, it's just, it's a little bit different like that. But that, again, that's kind of the way it is with sport. But I think people just should try to have a little bit more perspective, Yeah,
it's the same in baseball, football.
It's kind of proven when you think about it. Well, you guys, all the sacrifices, all the training, all the preparation, all the hard work, and then you break something in FP1 and you're racing or qualifying again 2 days later after surgery. I mean, incredible feats happen at that level.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, again, someone would call Jorge a whiner, but he breaks his collarbone on Friday and has surgery on it and comes back and races the same weekend. No, they would never even left the hospital. So, so it's like that's what I mean, by that, in that regard. And then, like traveling, I think people don't understand too that the riders, we kept our plane tickets for a year, and we flew 500 hours in a plane, which is a month out of the year. So if you take that out, and then your airport time, and then you're still training and you're still doing all this stuff, and then you show up to a race and you have food poisoning and you miss a day, and then you see, somebody, oh, he's just got a little stomach bug and he's not getting on the bike. It's like, you have no clue what's going on. And I'm not, not saying it's all fairy tales and stuff like this. It's a great lifestyle too, but there's a lot of it that's work that people don't see. It's flying in Wednesday on an international flight for meetings Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, flying out Monday morning with not much rest. And it's kind of like, oh, he's over in France doing this. And it's great. Not going to trade it, but it's work.
It's getting better now with that new MotoGP show on Amazon. What's it called? I forget what it's called.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like that F1 thing that they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really show almost everything.
Yeah, it's just, to say something for the guys in general. It's just all the guys at the top level, your top 14, 15 guys, it's, they are working their asses off when it comes to training and, just all that. They're putting in so much more work than Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, that's the easy work,
Right. So speaking of other racers and accused of whining, Stoner and Ducati and the lactose intolerance thing. What was that about? I mean, you were around at that time, no?
Oh no, yeah, I mean, he's got lactose intolerant. There's no doubt. I mean, we eat dinner, he's eating these pills, and I mean, I saw him battling, a couple times, and that's what's again, it's in the same time, Casey, getting in the battles with Rossi. There's nobody that ever beat Rossi with those verbal battles, and he's good at it, but he's also, has the power behind him too. And, with Casey, sometimes, I mean, there were some times that he probably said something that, could look like that, but then there were certain times where he brought up something that everybody was sitting there. All the riders were going, yeah, I mean, he's right. But then some of your, guys that don't know, they're like, oh, he's whining about it or whatever. And they're like, well, if you knew anything, he's not, So, I mean, there's that. I mean, but that's media, how they change everything or whatnot. But when it comes to riding, I mean, that dude, I mean, him and Marquez are the only two people that I actually, in awe a few times seeing him ride. Lorenzo did stuff perfect, and he was kind of in that metronome way of lap times, just so smooth and just knocking them down. And that's what Casey would say. I mean, he'll stack 25 laps in, and you can't, you just can't run that relentless pace. But like with Casey and Marquez, I could follow them through a corner. And I've said this a bunch of times that, you see something and it's like, okay, I mean, I can do that every now and then, but that's insane. And only two people have ever done that. I mean, again, Lorenzo, Danny, Rossi, all those guys fast, but it's kind of like you could see what they were doing. Lorenzo had a very 250 like style, more kind of like Bagnaia, just lots of corner speed, really quick. But to watch, someone do something on a motorcycle or manipulate it, that's Marquez and Casey. For sure.
I would think, I mean, I would think you can only do impossible things for so long until it comes and bites you, right? And you can see it with Marquez, you can see it with Lorenzo once he started crashing. And I see it when I train jiu-jitsu, right? Some guys are phenomenal for 6 months, right? And then they're off 6 months, and you ask them what happened. Oh, my back, or my shoulder. Or I think once you go past that limit, you start paying the price sooner or later.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's tough because you're, in some ways, you're mentally still, wanting to do it, but you're kind of like, all right, well, I've been hurt. I don't want to get hurt again. I don't want to, and it's not about getting hurt. It's just getting through the whole rehab part, and doing it. That's what a lot of people don't think. It's like you break your wrist. Nobody's scared to break their wrist. They don't want to do it. but it's how much time you're off. It's the surgery. It's all, all that type of stuff. And it just starts weighing on you. And that's where Lorenzo, you saw him get to the point where it was like, I mean, until I can win, or I feel like I can push this bike to win, I'm not going to just sit there and throw myself down all the time. A lot of people didn't like it, but then as soon as they got the bike right, I mean, unbelievably fast on that Ducati. And then on the Honda, he had just kind of, he had that crash at Barcelona where he lost the front and he took out one or two guys. And everybody kind of criticized him because he, it was his first but that was his second weekend on the Honda where it just started clicking. And then that crash happened. And then I think that was it, Yeah, but that was a big deal because he had been, a lot of people, they don't realize, like Lorenzo he had a couple injuries that were pretty good and come right back, and I think he just got to the point, like a lot of riders do, where they don't want to fight that battle, of coming back from the injury.
Yeah, you come out rusty, you come out, 99, 98%, 90%, and you're not getting any younger, and it's just, I mean, this is one of the most demanding sports on earth.
Yeah, and I mean, every couple of years you got the new kids coming up, and it's like that. I mean, you have to be. I mean, if you want to win at that level, you have to be fully in, or it's just. I mean, you're one click off, it's apparent, and you know it.
Yeah. What do you think about?
Yeah.
This
What about yourself, Gel? By the way, nobody's getting old here.
I'm 20.
I was gonna ask.
I'm 20 years into getting old.
So
do you think Marquez is gonna come back the way he was?
I mean, he'll be better than he was, I think, too. Because Marquez is different. I mean, that dude, he is. You're not gonna. I would have probably started looking at retiring with the eye stuff. I mean, when he came back this last time, like I think in the last year, something happened he had that big crash in Indonesia, maybe. Anyway, so huge crash there and then messed his eyes up. I would have probably, with the kind of money he's got, done what he's done, the injuries he's had with his arm and his eyes, I probably would have started looking at it. But I know, Marquez a little bit, and I know a lot of people that know him, and that dude is on a different level. I mean, he really is. So, I mean, what I say to that is that, yes, I mean, physically, he will come back. I mean, they knew at Qatar this year that he was going to have the surgery. Like his crew, they knew that he was going to have this surgery. So it wasn't a big shock. And, finally, he just made the call with the Honda not being a very good motorcycle right now to get his arm fixed, and get it done the right way. And I think now he's got that assurance that he's putting all the rehab in and all that stuff, but it's not going to be as bad as it was. It might not be 100%. Yeah, it's not going to be 100% because he's been injured and it's never 100% real. So he's going to have something, but I do think last year was way worse than physically he'll be next year. But the question mark is the Honda. I mean, since starting 2018, that bike has definitely not been the best bike on the grid, not even by far. And now it's the worst bike on the grid. So, a lot of 2015, 17 was Marquez kind of just making that little bit of a difference. And then from what I've seen and kind of talking with people too, 2018 up, they've been just struggling really bad with the front end. And then the last year and a half, the electronics, I know that they're struggling with just watching, a couple of things, what the bike's doing, all that. That crash he had in I think it's Indonesia, is the one where he hit his head, that giant one he had. That crash, when he crashed, he was not on throttle and he wasn't on the brake and the tires were hot. So for me, the electronics gave him too much. They freed up the rear wheel too much because it might have been backing in and it just went around and high-sided him because he went through the corner before and he was spinning it on the throttle. Tires were hot. He's up at pace. Then he goes into a corner and he chops the throttle, has no brake on, and the rear end comes around. That should not have happened. I mean, if he wasn't going to make the corner, he should have just ran wide, not have the rear end come around like that. That's an electronic thing. So I know that Honda, they need to make some differences. The bike is not good. I mean, you can see Taka, you can see everybody. I mean, there's nobody. You put Bagnaia on that Honda, he's not in the top 5 on that bike. No way. I mean, because the front end's junk on it. So they got to make that bike better for Marquez to do what he needs to be doing. You know, if you start talking about Marquez on a Ducati the last 4 years, it's a completely different subject.
I don't understand what's stopping them. They sell more motorcycles than everybody else on the grid, and
I think he's, you know, with Repsol and Honda, and you know, I think that might be a life deal. You know, it's just hard to say how they have it, but either way, the Honda needs to get better because that bike is, I would say, it's the worst bike on the grid right now. And I mean, from 2018, the Yamaha, Ducati, and Suzuki were better. The Aprilia was just slow, but it handled better. So if I was Marquez, like in 2019, I think he would have done better on the Aprilia.
it could be engineers. It could be they're lacking engineers because you see what they're doing in World Superbike. They're trying so hard and they're not, they're not even on the pace. And you saw what they did with Batista. And
no, it's safe to say that right now the Honda is the worst bike on the grid, by far. I mean, there's like, you can't, the Suzuki, Ducati, Yamaha, Aprilia. I mean, the KTM, it's kind of hit or miss on certain tracks. But I mean, that Honda is not good right now. So hopefully they get it better, and hopefully he comes back okay. And if he does, I think you'll see 100% out of Marquez. But in saying that, you've got 2 to 3 new guys now that are there that are fast, that can beat him, heads up. So I'm not going to say he's going to come back and dominate by any means. Even if you put him on the Ducati, I don't think he dominates, but I think he can. I think he'll win another title. Yes, for sure.
Do you think he's going to jump ship to Ducati, or is he Honda for life?
I think with what he's went through now, I mean, if he was going to do it, I think he would have done it personally, but we'll see.
Do you think Ducati will win a world championship in our lifetime?
Oh, yeah. In our lifetime.
No, I mean, it's, I am a Yamaha guy, but I do see a lot of.
You're a Suzuki guy that did a few seasons on Yamaha, but you're a Suzuki guy.
If they wanted to work together, we would, but they don't. So,
okay.
So anyway, I think Ducati, yes, because I see a lot in Pecco. I see a lot in Quartararo. Everybody does. I mean, he's made the difference. But I do think his style, suits the Yamaha a lot. Kind of like Jorge did a little bit. But no, I see Pecco. I mean, I see Pecco winning titles, multiple titles on a Ducati.
Didn't he just win the Race of Champions?
What's that?
He just won Race of Champions, right?
Yeah.
In Ducati World Week.
That was a fun race, though, I think. They're just popping wheelies and stuff. But I mean, if you look at what he's done since that San Marino GP that he lost the front when he hit the tear off from Miller, that's when it all clicked for him on. And it's been really apparent. And the thing that sucks is Ducati kind of a little bit messed his season up with the way they did their development stuff and testing. And they even said it, and he even said it. You could see the first 5 rounds, he wasn't like he ended the season or where he is now. So they messed up on their testing plan in the winter that started their season off slower. There's no doubt they owned up to it. But in saying that, if you give Pecco the bike he's on now in the first 5 races, he's there. He's made a couple little mistakes, there's no doubt, but in the same time, there's nobody else that we can talk about that's, would be beating Quartararo for a title. I mean, Jorge Martin's coming in and Bastianini, but Pecco and Quartararo are the only 2.
Do you think Quartararo is running out of talent right now? Is that what it is?
I mean, I think it's, I think the bike's got to get better, and I think it's not really a knock at Yamaha per se on their bike. It's a little bit more of the Japanese philosophy, and that's with the wings. It's clear that Ducati and KTM, Aprilia, especially Ducati, they invested in the downforce and an aero, and it's paid off. I mean, they had the aero in different ways from wheelie, to downforce. Now they're doing it on the side of the bike to pull it down. Where Yamaha, you can see their progression with wings, and a lot of it is just kind of a little bit of the Japanese kind of mentality on how they go about stuff, which isn't bad, but it's not as aggressive, and that's why they're further back. So, but in the same time, I think they take away wings in the next couple of years, just like they did 800s, and everybody spent a lot of money for nothing. So, because it is going to ruin racing, there's no doubt. So they're going to have to go backwards. So that's where you'll see another kind of shift to it. But I think that's where Yamaha suffered the most, is not, if they put in $1 million towards aero, then it's a completely different last 2 years.
Yeah, I think that if they would have done it a little earlier, Rossi might have had another, good season or two. Not that he shouldn't have retired when he did, or 2 years prior, but the 2 years before he retired, I think, would have been a little better for him.
Yeah, maybe 3. The last 2 years, I saw you could see a change in, like, just from him on a short straightaway to hitting the brakes. It just wasn't as crisp or as fast. Unbelievable for being his age, doing what he was doing. But the last 2 years, you could see, he lost that aggressiveness, or that kind of that hurry up, and a lot too, that crash that happened at Red Bull Ring too, that was pretty wicked, but I think that's, you could just see it, that he just kind of, he's older, and he started riding the bike not like a 20-year-old was riding.
Yeah, I think it was there because Yamaha and MotoGP probably asked him to, because people came to see him.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, people came to see him come in almost last. And
and now you see the attendance too, and there's a big shift, change.
Yeah.
So how about Aprilia? Is a heartwarming story, right? They came from nowhere, worked with Aleix, got the bike all the way to winning races. You think they got a chance?
Yeah, they do. They've worked well together. It's been interesting to see Aleix because, I raced against him, and he's put in his work to get up there. I didn't know if he had the talent to be right at the front end, but he's been working, the past years, and working with Aprilia, not giving up, and you can only pat him on the back now. He's been, he did a lot with Suzuki, and he's done a lot with Aprilia. Honda needs to hire him. That's what they need to do. But that is a good story, and I do think they're winning a title. It's going to be tough, because I would say, when you look at Jorge Martin, Pecco, Quartararo, rider talent, I would say they have a little bit more talent than Espargaro. He's doing well, but I think he's operating at 100% in the bike and the package and everything. The bike can get better for sure, but in the same time, when Pecco or Fabio's on, he's not at their level. When they're really on, there's just, he's not there. When it's kind of a conditions race, or stuff like that, or he can get in there and battle, he's in there, but he's that little tick off.
Do you ever look at them with the elbows down and you go like, copying me?
No, I think it's funny that it's just because me and John Hopkins, back in the day, which again, like, I was watching guys, Jean-Philippe Ruggiero, when I was watching 88 500s, he was dragging his elbow. So there was the guys before me, but it is funny because, me and Hopkins' style, it's normal now, and even more aggressive, actually. If you watch Pecco from the back, or Martin, they're completely off the damn bikes, like completely off of them. So it's changed a lot, but that's the downforce, and that's the grip, that they're an extra wing with pulling that bike around. Back when they didn't have all that grip, you didn't need to ride like that. You're actually riding a little more dirt bike style because you're sliding the bike. But here, you're basically in a roller coaster through the turn.
Yeah, I remember watching an interview with you where you defined your riding style as "quote unquote" sloppy. As they're showing videos of you like inch, inch after inch,
Yeah, well, what I mean by that is I was real sloppy in the way of I didn't care. I was precise where I put like the tires on the bike on the track, but what the bike did under me, I did not care much at all. Like when it was moving around or shaking or whatever, people, that kind of happened. I liked it. I mean, I came from Superbikes where I won my first Superbike with no traction control. So, I mean, I came from the older, bikes moving around, sliding, backing into the corner, which they never do now. It was fun to ride back then. And so that's what I mean by sloppy is if there was like even turn one at Fontana, if there was time to be made and it made the bike a little bit upset, I didn't care, and I liked it, so that's why my bike, I was always just a little bit all over the place.
Translation, I made that bike my bitch.
There's
a theme there.
Yeah. Nabil,
I will tell, this was a true story. And this just shows physics because I can't do it. I couldn't have done it back then if you asked me to. But going through turn one at Fontana, I think it was 2007, I believe, or 8. We went to the smaller forks. I forgot what they were. We had the big giant ones in 06, and then in 07, we went down like 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter in 07 or 08. But the handlebar bolts, the clamps, there were 2 bolts and they were all torqued down to their deal. But when I go through turn 1 at Fontana off the banking, turn 1, and I'd go to, pull to turn 2, I would pull the bar into the tank. I would spin it on the forks and then I'd be, the bars would be like this. And this is a true story. On pit lane, Houseworth, who's a big, 250-pound guy, Hans, who is my truck driver, he was a big old dude. They grabbed the handlebars themselves and they could not turn it. They could not get it to move. But it was just the physics, what the bike was doing plus what I was doing. And it's just, that's all I can say was the physics of what was happening that would do it, because we had to take the clamps off and put a 3-bolt clamp with stainless steel bolts. Wow. That they wouldn't spin.
Wow.
That was a true story. And I mean, I remember Yoshimura, they were like, huh? They're like, you've got it. Why are they spinning? They were like, tighten them down. They were like, well, we're going to break the internals on the forks. So they had to change them. But that was a physics thing. That wasn't because I was that strong, but it just shows what forces are going on with the bike.
Now, do you pull on it? Because everywhere when I do it on whatever I read, right, it's always push the bars, not pull the bars.
So if I'm going through a chicane and I'm going to try to do it make the flick as fast as I can, like, again, let's just say turn 1 at Fontana, you're starting right there. As soon as I'm thinking of going right, I mean, obviously you're picking up the throttle because it's going to unweight the front, make it easier. But I'm with my left heel, I'm pushing with my right foot, and my left arm, I'm pulling and I'm pushing with this one. So you're on the left side of the bike hanging off. And as you go over the center of the bike, like right when you're in the center, I would basically be putting my elbows like this into my stomach. And you're just like trying to rip the bike to make it change direction. And it's with your feet and it's your hands at the same time. It's pulling left, pushing right, pulling left, pushing right to go from left to right. And it just makes that flick happen that much quicker, but you have to use everything.
Okay, yeah, that's a good secret because
use your arm if you're going to do it at half speed.
I only push it, and now I know I got to push it and pull it.
If you're pushing with your right hand and you're pulling with your left, then do the same thing with your feet. With your left heel, you're grabbing your rear set or whatever, and you're pulling on it, and then you're pushing with your right foot. You do that both at the same time, and it just makes the bike flick.
It's a good secret.
Yeah.
Now you learn more notes.
All right. So now we have a question from the audience, right, Nabil? Is that what it is?
Right, from a certain CE who chose to remain anonymous.
Yeah, is a good listener.
Yeah.
Is a good listener. I mean, his wife says he's a good listener. I don't know.
So what was the question, Gal?
Oh, hold on. I gotta grab my phone. Where is CE's text?
I gotta run in about 5 minutes or so.
Okay. Ask about the cyclist chick built like a brick house in Valencia, 2010, 2011 maybe. She wanted some Spies time. I don't think she got it though.
Who was that? Who asked that?
I'm not gonna tell you.
Colin? I wonder who would have asked that. They gotta know me. No, that was that was. I'm pretty sure that was a girl that went to most of the World Superbike races, and I didn't know her that well, but yeah, I do remember seeing her, and she was jacked. Yeah, I think she was trying to get in somewhere. Who asked that? Come on, I know them.
CE is a listener.
CE. Single digit race number.
Yeah, Colin.
I didn't say anything.
Didn't say.
I got some Colin stories.
All right. Dish.
Yeah, no.
No? All right.
We'll have to do you went one.
Yeah. Should we end? Oh, yes, baby.
Ooh.
Let me see that. Oh, yeah.
Look at that beauty.
Woo.
That's the real deal.
Nice. And that's the 07 Jixer?
08.
08. Wow.
Wow, very cool.
Hold on.
Are you going to take him out to track day?
How does this come back on?
Well, we can still see you.
We see you.
Oh, okay. I can't see you. Yeah, I've talked to Tom because I've got a membership out at here's my little simulator, car simulator. I've got a membership out at Eagles Canyon for my cars, and I wanted to take the bikes out there next year sometime and just ride them. Nothing crazy, just get them started and ride them a couple laps.
Yeah, those babies, they need to run.
Yep. So